Hey there, and welcome to Interfaith Awareness Week and the conversation about New Thought and what's new in New Thought. I am Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni, New Thought Philadelphia, and the affiliated New Thought Network.
Hello, dear ones. Reverend Dr. Robert Brzezinski with you here from New Thought Media Network. And I am very honored to be sharing this time with you and Reverend Bill and the people you'll see on the screen here today. The music we're going to share, I feel we've created a great reflective of New Thought to share with you here today as part of Interfaith Week.
I'm looking forward to it, and I'm also really honored and pleased to be here.
Well, what do you think, Bill? Let's just get into some music.
Yeah, New Thought has a lot of really fun, uplifting music that's a little bit different than typical church music. So let's start with a smattering. Let's play one.
I can't believe Rory is not on the stage playing with me. My wings were heavy, I could not fly, haunted by dreams that were meant to come true. Love was there, I couldn't see it, so the voice of salvation came shining through you, and you said that God is all there is. God is all there will ever be. That's your part. God is all there is. There is. God is all. God is all there will ever be. In the sky of my mind was lightning and thunder. I never could trust it would finally be right, but the truth in your eyes said don't worry and don't wonder, and you sang me a song that has shattered the lie, and you said that God is all there is. God is all there will ever be. God is all there is. God is all there will ever be. And like a shepherd, you pulled me through when my heart was troubled and I didn't know what to do. Your compassion planted a seed in my life. Now the flower is me, and all the time I'm singing, all the time I'm singing, God is all there is. God is all there will ever be. God is all there is. God is all there will ever be. If your wings are heavy and you cannot fly, haunted by dreams that were meant to come true, God is right there. You just have to see it. So let the voice of salvation come shining through you, and just sing that God is all. God is all. God there will ever be. God is all there is. God Thank you.
That's a good story. That is all there is.
That's Ricky Byers performing God Is All There Is. And that was at Center for Spiritual Living in Salt Lake City. Ricky's based in Los Angeles. She plays all over the country and all over the world. She will be the music director at the affiliated New Thought Network's retreat this October. That's at Unity Village, just outside Kansas City, with a big event that's open to the public as well. If you want, you can go to antn.org, and that'll be in the notes on the program, and learn more about that. What she was saying about God Is All There is kind of the only thing that we all agree on in New Thought, is that there is only God. That one divine power and presence is everything, everywhere. It's everyone. It's each of us. It's indwelling. And it's also in every religion. Sometimes people ask me what New Thought is about, and I kind of say it's very young. The original philosophical basis was Ralph Waldo Emerson, which was the early 1800s. And he was talking about the oversoul and self-reliance and the fact that there is one divine source. And other people have put some legs on that with the teaching. And it's all building on all of the traditions and religions and practices that have come before. So it's not New Thought instead, it's New Thought sort of in addition. There's discussions about whether New Thought is a religion or a philosophy or a spiritual practice or a way of life, and it's kind of all of the above. And it doesn't require that you give up believing in something else. So I sometimes describe it as the greatest hits of all the religions. If you can love like Jesus and meditate like Buddha and pray like Muhammad and believe like Moses, that's a pretty good start. And it doesn't take anything away from any of the other religions. One of the things I discovered several decades ago was a tradition, a ritual for acknowledging all of the other spiritual traditions. It's called the Flames of Faith. It was created by Reverend Dr. Gene Sweet, who's been a longtime member of the affiliated New Thought Network and a New Thought minister. And what she did is she very quickly was inspired to write this ritual that acknowledges how we are supported by all of the other faith traditions. And we're going to do that right now.
We perform this ceremony to acknowledge that all people and all faiths come from the one power, love, intelligence, which we call spirit or God. We honor the richness that comes from our shared diversity and bless the interwoven energy of the divine feminine and masculine. We light the first candle for the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium, the natural way. We light the second candle for the earth-based traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous people, the way of primal spirituality. We light the third candle for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. We light the fourth candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. We light the fifth candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths and the path of compassion. We light the sixth candle for all forms of Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness as the path of love. We light the seventh candle for all forms of Islam, honoring the path of submission to the will of God as the highest calling. We light the eighth candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and peace. We light the ninth candle for all forms of New Thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practice of universal spiritual principles. As we light the healing candle, please put silently into the light the names of anyone or any place you wish to have experienced the healing flame of God's eternal love.
Blessed be.
One power, one power, one power, one power, one power, one power. There's one power invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power indescribable, and you speak of it with every word you say. Mysterious until you know the truth, as simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, angels' wings or heaven's door. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? It's the power of the love in you and me. One power, one power, one power, one power. We speak so many languages, different clothing, different colors, different names. The different is only dangerous when we forget that in the heart we're all the same. And we'll remember once we close our eyes to see that such distances were never meant to be. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, Hashem or heaven's door. It's Muhammad, it's your mind, it's your soul, or it's your sign. It's the universe, it's music, Mother Earth or Father Time. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? Whatever name you give it, it's the very air we breathe. Oh, it's the power of the love in you and me. One power, oh, one power is what we are. One power, one power. It's the freedom of forgiveness. It's the sweetness of release. It's the joy of inspiration. It's the sunshine on your face. It's the birthright of all nations. It's the boundlessness of space. It's the beauty of a baby, the serenity of sleep. It's the anger we abandon for its love that's most deep. It's one power. There's one power. What we are is one power. It's the power of
and that is One Power by Daniel Nahmad. If I had only one song to define the New Thought media, if I only had one song to define the New Thought movement, it is Daniel Nahmad's One Power. And Daniel is one of our more prolific songwriters and artists in this movement, in this philosophy. And that says it all, at least to me. Thanks for picking that one, Bill.
Yeah, One Power, it sums it up because it reinforces the same thing that we're talking about with the Flames of Faith, is that there is only one. And when that's the core of the belief, and that's basically all there is. We believe that there's one that creates everything, that has since the beginning of time and continues to do so, is creating everything that exists now and everything that's coming next. The implications are huge, because that means that we are part of that one power, that everyone who we are engaged with is part of that one power. That includes our loved ones and also the people who we detest. Because, that's if there's only one, it's got to be all of it. And that informs the whole rest of the New Thought philosophy. There's good and bad. There's evil and goodness, and those are all experiences, just like there's hot and cold are different experiences, but there's only temperature. There is one thing of temperature warming and warming and warming or cooling, and it's the degree of warmth. We experience it as duality, but the reminder is that even though our senses are telling us that there's something else besides me out there and I'm in here, we are all part of one infinite creative power that creates everything. And that's the foundation. That's the crux of New Thought. And I just wanted to mention that New Thought takes a lot of different forms. There are some spiritual organizations that actually call themselves New Thought. So my spiritual community in Philadelphia is called New Thought Philadelphia. There are other branches of New Thought as this has evolved. It's a teaching that caught on in a lot of different directions. So some people are familiar with the Centers for Spiritual Living, which used to be the United Church of Religious Science, or Religious Science International. So religious science is a branch of New Thought. The Unity Churches, also known as the Unity Church of Christianity, is a New Thought denomination or flavor. All the same teaching, that there is one, with different teachers and ways of explaining it, but it's all the same message. Same thing with Divine Science, which is another one that was started by some different teachers and way-showers a long time ago. The Universal Foundation for Better Living is the same teaching, taking a different flavor. And there are lots of local flavors too. Hillside Chapel in Atlanta and the Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, and on and on and on and on, that are either part of this or independent or part of a different one. And it's all the same message. There is one power and presence, one love that creates everything and creates us, and it's creating its next experience. And we're participants in the creative process.
Yeah. That's what caught me when I first walked into what I would now call a New Thought Center. And incidentally, that happened in Salt Lake City. And the primary belief that there is one really caught me. And through my studies, and I always loved that the branch I found New Thought through was called religious science. That pushes some buttons for people. I get it. And I like that. But I also thought to myself, what better way to be a scientist than within the world of religions? And over and over and over again, when I look at guiding principles, primary beliefs, core concepts, however we want to phrase it, and Dr. Ernest Holmes famously penned what is known as What We Believe. All of these ideas, all these documents, all these professions of what it is we believe, regardless of New Thought, across countless traditions, begin with this same principle. We say it in different words. We dress it up in different clothing. I love your analogy here, Bill, of looking at it as different flavors. and we come from the root that is this oneness, that there is only one.
Yeah, and the implications of that are amazing. One of them is when we're praying. Who or what are we praying to? It's called a science. The one you're talking about is religious science. There's another one called divine science. Why is it called a science? And what is scientific about it? And do scientists agree that it's the truth and there's one? I actually set about to do a research study to prove that prayer works. Because interestingly, 70% of the people in the world believe that prayer works, and the scientists say we haven't proven it. So I got involved in how do you create a methodology to do that. So I got myself a primary investigator who was going to do this whole thing and started talking to the funders about exactly what would be required. There's a lot of technical details. There's a lot of things that the preconceived notions in the scientific community about how you would go about establishing statistically and scientifically the efficacy of prayer. There have been some studies which I think have been flawed just in the design of the studies, and they haven't been conclusive. But the part that made me realize how difficult this was is if there's one mind, one power, one presence, one intelligence that knows everything, and the scientific community says that you have to do a double-blind study. There's only one, so you need volunteers to be blind, and as soon as somebody starts to understand that this is working, then they disqualify themselves for the scientific study. So that was a big piece of the challenge. And when I was talking to the funder, and this is one of those internationally renowned funders that funds big idea research, and the person who did the assessment said, well, there's a whole bunch of holes in the study scientifically, but at the basis of it, you can't do this because the Bible says that you shouldn't test God. And it's like, all right, well, if that's part of the criteria that we're going to be using, then there is no possible way to do this study. And I could argue with him, but he's the guy with the checkbook.
Right.
We're not going to be able to complete the rest of the study that way. So even the 70% of people who believe that prayer works don't have a scientifically proven prayer. And we call it a science not because we have proven it using the scientific method and are able to do a repeatable double-blind study, but because it's a principle.
Yeah.
If there's only one, then it is one creative power that creates everything. That one creative power that's creating me and allowing me to create this next experience is the same creative power that's allowing everybody else to create their experience, and it works the same for everybody. In this entire manifest universe, 14.2 billion light years across, with all the billions of galaxies and billions of stars, there's one set of natural laws. Now, we keep discovering more and more about them, but there's one set of natural laws, and they apply to everybody. It's like, you raise your hand if you're exempt from gravity. If electricity doesn't apply to you. It's not true. It applies to everybody, and it's the same with the spiritual principles, the creative laws that we are using to create, which we are doing with intention and consciousness. And the scientific part is that that's a principle, in the same way that gravity is a principle, and everybody not only can use it, but is using it. And the whole idea behind New Thought and the New Thought movement is to learn how to use it to create the life that we want more effectively.
Yeah. And therein is, for me, the juice, the real fun of all of this, because New Thought promises us that we are creating our experience. That is based on our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, inputs, past beliefs, lived experiences. And as we dive deeply into this philosophy, we really do learn I am in control. I am in control in creating my experience of what's happening in the world. It doesn't mean that I cause someone to run a red light and hit my car. It doesn't mean that I am the sole causative power behind an event. It means I have the ability on how I interpret and experience that event, and that is what creates my life. So that is a point I have found we can get a little fuzzy when people say, oh, well, you created that. No, I'm sorry, I didn't create the fact that I woke up with a headache, or that I woke up with an illness, or that I caught a viral infection, or any of those things. But I do get to create how I relate to and how I experience that event. And that's really a basis. Before we talk too much about prayer itself and the process of it, Dr. Bill, I'm going to invite you to talk a little bit, because a real basis here is in the proof. The early proof is in physical healing, is in the forerunners of this proving the principles with a demonstration of physical healing for people, and that's important.
Yep. And like I mentioned earlier, that the philosophical work was Ralph Waldo Emerson, who insisted that there is one creative power that creates everything. And he got thrown out of the church that he was leading, where he was a minister, because he said he didn't believe the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. He says there's not three, there's one. And it was a rather spectacular departure, because he mentioned his disbelief while he was giving the commencement address at Harvard Divinity School. So, so he was off on his own. But he didn't say how to do it. He didn't tell anybody how it works, how you'd actually make this work. So there was a guy named Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, who by profession was a watchmaker up in New England. And so he got the idea, well, if this works, then I should be able to make it work. So he started a process where he tried healing people. If this is all a mental process, and there's one power, and the healing happens because of the medication that we're taking, or because of the procedures that we're going through, and it's all can also happen mentally, he set about trying to heal people. And over the course of I think it was the 10 years or so, he healed thousands and thousands of people, and it's all documented. And he did it in person, and he did it by correspondence. People would write to him and say, this is what the malady that I'm having. And he would do the work in consciousness and send them back a note saying that the work is done. And they'd write back saying, wow, just by coincidence, that horrible situation that I was trying to deal with has resolved itself. So just with thousands and thousands of examples of that healing principle being demonstrated, other people started saying, hey, there's something to this. And then other people started using the same techniques. One of his patients was Mary Baker Eddy, who went on to found Christian Science. So the Christian Science Church, people, a lot of them know, many of them the diehards, and say don't go to the doctor. What they want to do is go to a practitioner who's going to do a healing prayer for them, and they rely solely on that in the formal dogmatic piece of that. It grew into other teachings. That's where divine science came from. That's where the Unity Church came from. That's where Ernest Holmes studied for creating religious science and the science of mind. And there are others that have come about afterwards since that. But it was the work of Quimby proving that this technique works, proving that we are all connected, proving that you don't need to do a hands-on thing in order to have a change, that made it all happen. And 100 years or so ago, when a lot of these people were around, there was a bunch of jockeying for position for who was going to be lead the healing world. So Western medicine, was one of the horses in the race, and there was the osteopaths and the chiropractors and the acupuncturists, and there's all of the Eastern medicines and Ayurveda, and the people who understood that mental healing could be transformative wanted to participate. That's actually why Ernest Holmes named it religious science. And he called his prayer technique spiritual mind treatment, because he wanted it to sound like it was in the running for being able to compete with Western medicine. And a couple of things happened that let Western medicine get ahead. I think that anesthesia and antibiotics were huge, empowering things like not dying of bacterial infections, and also being able to do surgery. Because surgery without anesthesia, that's just like really, that's awkward and very quick.
I wouldn't know, and I wouldn't want to know. So exactly, and that is it, for me. When I look at the history of New Thought, and also look towards the vision of New Thought, this healing prayer is the common thread, again, between all the various churches and organizations you named earlier. We have slightly different beliefs and different way of approaching those. Again, the core tenets, the central tenets are the same. And along the way, this affirmative prayer has been the thread, one of the golden threads that is present everywhere. And some people like to say it comes in 3 steps or 5 steps or 7 steps. And I'm sure if we wanted to get really nitpicky, we could say there's an 11 step out there somewhere or something. And yet the experience of it, and I love how you yourself have brought a slightly different perspective, let's say, on the whole process by simply calling it a practical prayer.
Yep.
And what is more valuable, I think, for us, for any of us in the world of prayer, than for it to be practical?
Well, and when I wrote the book about practical prayer, and this was for everybody who knows about New Thought and specifically science of mind. A practical prayer is a spiritual mind treatment. It's the same technique that Ernest Holmes came up with in his textbook 100 years ago. What I found is that people were using, it was lingo. People would say, you want to get a spiritual mind treatment? And they'd get this vision of somebody reaching into their mind wearing a white lab coat and doing something experimental. And it's like, no, get away from my head. And it also was really easy to misunderstand because it's a healing prayer. And it can be transformative, not just for physical healing, but for experiences of prosperity or enoughness in our lives, about relationships and love and connection, having harmony in our workplace. We can pray for any of that stuff. We can pray to be more creative in the way that we're engaging with the world. We can even pray to be more aware of our spiritual nature. There are lots of things that we can pray for. And so to get away from the jargon, I wrote down the steps in a book that I called Practical Prayer for Real Results. And what we're looking to get in our life is a change. That's the result. And the practical prayer lets us get there. And I thought it was really straightforward. That was transformational for me when I found New Thought in the 1990s. It's like, wow, I learned how to do this spiritual mind treatment thing, and I started changing my life. Yeah. And it was spectacular. And then I started wondering, why doesn't everybody do this? And because it seemed like, this is a way to change your life. Why doesn't everybody do this? And you alluded to one of the reasons a little bit earlier, is that if I'm creating my life and I'm doing that according to my beliefs, and my life sucks, then who can I blame? Mm-hmm. And in this teaching of oneness, there's only one, and and the change is going to come from within. So there's a lot of the self-help movement is based on affirmative statements. I am prosperous. I am healthy. I am well. I am popular. And it works really well, right up until it stops working. And what a practical prayer does is it turns that practice of affirmations and it turns it into a spiritual practice. So a practical prayer is actually an affirmation amplified and activated by spirit. And even when it's not a practical prayer, it works because we believe that it's going to work. Science of mind it sounds like it's about our thinking. It's much more about our beliefs. So anyway, talking to all the people who I knew, I would talk about practical prayer. We go over that. They dealt with their level of disbelief and moved on. People kept on telling me, well, you should talk about this more. You should do a podcast. And I did a pilot for a podcast a couple of times. And talking to other people who are involved in New Thought, it's like we're all singing, we're preaching to the choir. Or we're all singing in the same choir. And I figured I had maybe a dozen episodes in me. And then I met Carol. And Carol Lawrence, who's joining us today. Let's bring Carol in so we can talk about her to her face.
Yeah.
Carol.
Good morning, Carol.
Welcome in. So Carol has been on her own interesting path. She grew up Christian, very seriously Christian, and then became a pastor, and a Christian pastor. And you jumped from a bunch of different denominations, and always doing that. And at the time that I found you, which was, I think, in 2020, you had found New Thought, and you had found that it wasn't completely compatible with all of the traditional religions that you'd been involved in. And so we started this podcast together, having this conversation about practical prayer. And we're over 200 episodes now, and the conversation is still going strong. And the thing that was so illuminating for me was to learn about the difference between a practical prayer and a traditional prayer. And I'm just going to let you talk about that without me putting any words in your mouth.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me
Sure.
in this space. This is really an honor, and it's been great fun, and it's been such a learning experience working with you or just being with you. So, moving aside from that, let me just answer your question. But it was important, because gratitude is important hugely.
Mm-hmm.
The difference that I experienced. First of all, I'm trying to find a starting point, because a lot of what I say is not reflective of the tradition that I came from, because I wasn't a really great candidate for the tradition in the first place. and let me just say that without, casting a shade on anything. It's just that I'm hugely inquisitive, and I don't give up until I get some kind of satisfactory answer. So I knew I needed more, and in all areas of my spiritual life. And when I met you, you were into the prayer thing, and I'm not trivializing it, but you were into this prayer thing. And I said, okay. And I felt the difference in the traditional prayer and New Thought, and what you were saying. And so my inquisitive mind is like, let me peel back the layers of the onion. Since we're talking about one God, let me figure out what the difference is. And it's hugely uncomplicated. Let me start with that. Practical prayer, affirmative prayer, whatever you want to call it, is hugely uncomplicated. Traditional prayer, under the banner of traditional religion, is hugely complicated to me. and it should. And if the purpose of prayer is to get in touch with God, to, this idea of having a conversation with God. Now, of course, we're anthropomorphizing God, because that's what traditional religion does. It sees God as a person, but kind of mythical and all of that business, but with all human attributes. If you look at, you got to have a starting place, like on Monopoly on that
Mm-hmm.
game, there's go.
Yes,
Everything
you need
starts
go,
from go, right? Right. So I'm thinking, to understand prayer and to have any level of confidence in it, where is the go? And the go is too complicated in traditional prayer to me, because you've got the Father, you got the Son, you got the Holy Spirit, and you've got the devil. And that's a lot to deal with. How can you have so many different entities and ideas crashing in when you're after one? For example, you're after healing, because you mentioned that your concern is healing. So you got all of these different individuals, because that's what traditional prayer or traditional theology is one God in three persons, and you got to go through all of that. And I'm thinking, okay, so who is the most important one here? Is it God? Is it Jesus? Is it the Holy Spirit? And when you say that, who's the most important? Now we got three. I haven't even gotten to my issue yet. So I got to figure out how I get to my issue. And if I'm clear enough about that, okay, if I'm clear enough, then I got to figure out, am I worthy enough to enter into this holy place at the throne of grace, at the throne of God, with Jesus on the right hand of God and the Holy Spirit in there somewhere. Am I, and no disrespect intended. Let me be really clear about that, because no disrespect to anybody's way of belief. I'm just breaking it down to how it plays out in real life, in the practical sense, because that's what really matters at the end of the day. So do I even qualify to enter into a dialogue with this God? Because the Bible says that God cannot be in the same place as sin. So knowing myself or anybody else who's going to be honest, you're not getting in there, because you're not getting in there. And let me just, there's the teaching of the tabernacle in the Old Testament, and it's, you enter into the courtyard, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, and then there's the sacrifice, and you get into the holy place and the holy of holies. It's a lot to get in through all of that. And the blood is on then if you skip to the New Testament, do I have the right thought about Jesus? If I'm not clear on that, I would be gone. I could be. By the time I'm able to pray with any level of confidence and belief. Do you see what I mean? It's a lot of stuff you got to check off before you can even really get to the one God. And everybody will say it's the one God in three persons. There are even songs about that.
Yeah.
So, and if I go any further, it's going to get into another thing about control and all of that. And that's not what this is about. But it's a part of it, trying to understand, how did we get so fragmented, and what is the point of this? And New Thought, to me, although coming from a traditional space, trying to embrace practical prayer or affirmative prayer, whichever you prefer, that's a huge, heavy lift, because it's a little different. Mm-hmm. And the big difference is your go. How do you see God? And if you can reconcile that, then you can move forward. But in that space, there's a little bit, And so for me, it's bringing into finding that intersection, because I believe that belief is at the intersection. So I bring everything that I know and think, and everything that I understand from New Thought practical prayer, and lay them juxtaposed or even on top of each other, and see what matches, what doesn't, and what are the differences. And that's where I found the truth. So as I listened to you talk about the scientific method, and, I think mine was scientific too, because science is just the way you get to an answer. So I said, okay, this is my science, I get there. But you have to want to do it. You have, and it can be exhausting, but what I'm saying to anybody that's listening, it's exhausting, but so is disappointment exhausting. And the lack of, just the loss of faith in trying to get it back in what you're supposed to believe. That's all exhausting. So take a deep breath and say, let me just try this. And if you got one more thing to try, really try this. Try practical prayer and / affirmative prayer, because I know a lot of people I know it by that name. But try this, because it makes sense. It makes sense even against the backdrop of traditional theological thought.
Yeah, thank you. And that's the point. And we did the Flames of Faith before, and Daniel Nahum was singing about the one power. A practical prayer is not owned by any particular religion or denomination. It works for anybody. If somebody has a deep belief in Jesus or in Allah, it works. It's the same technique, and it works. The important part in a practical prayer, and we'll break down the steps in a little bit. Important part in a practical prayer is that we have to let go of, God doesn't want me to have that. God wants me to be poor. Why? And then the opposite is like, I'm experiencing something. Why did God give me this illness? It's like, it just happened. This is where we are. That's your go. The situation that you're in right now. When you come to the realization that if you want to have a change in the experience that you're having, then perhaps there's something going on in consciousness that has brought that about. In Scripture, it doesn't say it is done as you affirm. It is done as you think. It is done as you say. It is done as you believe. And the interesting thing about our beliefs is that what we believe out loud and what we tell ourselves we believe in our heads is not necessarily what we believe. There are hidden beliefs, there are doubts, there are beliefs that are left over from previous generations, from our education. There are things that we believe and we don't know why we believe them. And our beliefs are creating our experience. It is done as we believe. So if there's something going on in my life that's not to my liking, then there's a belief that's operating in there someplace, and I get to go and understand what it is. I don't need to go find it. That's what psychotherapy is for. I don't need to go find what the experience was that I had in my childhood that caused me to have this belief. I need to understand that that's the belief, and I'm choosing a different belief now as something intentional and conscious, and then take whatever steps are necessary to let go of the limiting belief. You know, and a perfect example is my family has always been had money problems. You know, I grew up and we had money problems, and now I'm working and, you know, living hand to mouth and paycheck to paycheck, and have the same sort of money problems. Well, there's a belief there that people like me have money problems, and that will continue to repeat until we replace it with a different belief. It is completely possible that everybody in my family had money problems, and it stops with me, because now suddenly I am the one who's prosperous. And I don't have to get rid of my family. I have to get rid of the belief, and I have to let go of that belief's ability to control my experience and replace that with a new belief. And that belief can, you know, there's a lot of prosperity teachers that teach you to repeat, I am prosperous. I did a class, we did I am prosperous 70 times a day, every day. I am prosperous, I am prosperous, I am prosperous. And it's just words. But it set the tone, because in the rest of the 10-week class where we were doing I am prosperous, we did forgiveness work. We did some other releasing work. We did acceptance work. We fine-tuned our consciousness and went through the cleansing process of letting the stuff that was in there shake out a little bit. And the reason that we wound up, everybody who took the class wound up being prosperous, is because as soon as those thoughts went away, the new thought that was standing there 70 times a day is, I am prosperous. So that got planted into belief, and hey, here we go, I am prosperous. And it's working, and it continues to be working, because I uprooted the old belief, and I have the new belief, and it continues to work, and it continues to create for me. When you start blaming the situation that we have on a power outside of yourself, it can be very reassuring. Well, I prayed for this, but God didn't want me to have it. I prayed, and the answer was no. Or the answer was not now. And what we learn in New Thought is that the infinite creative power that has created everything since the beginning of time only has one answer. It always says yes. It might say yes to what we don't want if we believe that we don't deserve it. It will say yes to us believing that we don't deserve it, and we won't get it. Now that sounds really convoluted and complicated, but it's not. It is all about what's in our belief system. People say to me, well, how do you know what's in your belief system? Well, fortunately, that infinite creative power that creates everything has created a topographical map, life-size, of your belief system, and it's called your life. Want to know what you believe? Look at your life. That's the result that you've been getting so far. Okay, you like it? Great. Keep doing what you've been doing. You want to change something? Okay, that's where the practical prayer comes in. The ability to have a different thought, a new thought, and replace some of the old thoughts and the old beliefs with that newness, and make way for the newness to happen. I'm taking a breath now.
I want to go. Listen, you know what we say on the Practical Prayer podcast. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. But life is a lot. But I want to go back, if we can. Remember, we talked about from go, like the point go, and adjusting to a different kind of prayer. Again, you got to go to that go. So if it's as you believe, you have to examine, of course, what you believe. And that can take a minute, because if you're believing, you said something. You said, God doesn't want me to have it, as an example of, being in it. That means that you have to believe in a God that has a want, that God. And then what is the want based on? Do I have to be good? Do I have to be almost good? Can I be good enough? You got to go through all of that, and blah blah blah. Okay, does God supply the need? There's this famous thing that people like to say: God supplies your needs, not your wants. And I cringe, at that, because I can give you mega scriptures supporting that. That's not true. But here's the thing: if it's as you believe, it's what you believe about God. It's like let me use this example. It's like the exchange of power. That's what it is. I've been remodeling my whole office. It's been a crazy experience, but I can liken it to changing from traditional prayer to practical prayer. I could use this as a metaphor. Mm-hmm. But in doing that, I've had to reconnect wires and all that business. And I couldn't get something to work that had been working just fine before. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And I just simply said, let me just try a different outlet, because apparently there's something faulty about this one. I'll worry about what's faulty about this outlet later. Right now, I'm trying to get something done. So I simply tried a different outlet. And it's the same thing. It's all electricity. But I changed to a different source of the power flow, so to speak, by just putting the plug in something different. That can be hugely confusing, because I could get bogged down in what's wrong with this outlet over here. How come it's not working? It was working yesterday. And and didn't go off into the what do you call those things that you flip the switch and the electricity works? It's like a box.
Circuit breakers, yeah.
Yeah, the circuit breakers.
The fuse box.
So I could go down the hall and try to figure out which switch that is and all that. But listen, I don't have time for that. What I want is I want this thing to work, because I got something coming up in a half hour. It's got to work. So I pull the plug and I try something different. And to me, it's that simple, but it's the will of letting go of what you think has to be, right, and the old way of thinking, and try something different. You often use the term turn away from. Mm-hmm. For me, there are certain magic words, and everybody's got to find their magic. But for me, those were magic words. Turn away from what you don't want and turn away from to what you do want. That's really simple. It's really simple. And maybe hard to do. What's keeping you from doing it? Because I want to make this plug work, because it didn't work. It worked yesterday. Look, yep. The thing, just leave it alone. You got something else that you want. Try something else that might work. Can't be stuck on, it's got to work this way. There could be another path.
Yeah, you reminded me.
Can I go
of
back
story.
to?
Couple of years ago, my daughter and her husband moved into a new house, and they had their internet installed, and everything's working fine, and the guy leaves and it doesn't work. And they go down to the basement to check on the router, and now it's working again. And then it stopped working, and then they called the guy back, and he went down and checked, and it was working just fine. And it took a while to find out that the internet router was plugged into a circuit that was connected to the light switch. So whenever somebody went and turned the lights on in the basement, the internet worked. As soon as they were finished checking it and they went upstairs and they turned off the light switch, it stopped working. Well, it took a while to figure that out. And their approach, very simply, was just leave the light on all the time. That worked for them. It's really easy in a situation like that, and I'm able to tell you the end of the story. Well, God didn't want you to have internet. God doesn't want you to always have internet. God doesn't want you to think that internet is dependable at your house. It's subject to whim. And it would be really easy to create a whole belief system around that, about, oh, I'm not worthy of having this utility. And it's not true. There's a switch. And you got to engage properly with the switch. Is there something wrong with the outlet? Use a different outlet.
Absolutely. And when the other thing that you said is significant is, does God want? Does God want? And that's an important point that I like to stay with people, because you're not going to get anywhere until you settle on your vision, your belief about God. It's just not going to work. You can give me 5 steps, 7, 11, does not matter. If you until you get a real clear picture of the God that you believe in, or what is that? So let me use a personal example as real quick. I was divorced eons ago, and I was in a fundamentalist church. And because of that, and my intent to remarry, I was told that I was no good. I would never be any, what is it they say? You are no earthly good to God anymore. Just the meanest things that you can think of to let you know that you are not, you're nothing.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, yeah, it was harsh, but you know what? Listen, there's a lot of harsh. And even with that, here's my point with that. It was harsh. I was in shock, then tears and all the rest of that. But the end of that is I got a choice of how I'm going to go on. People take pills and they exit out. That was not an option to me. But that's a reality. You got to, people do that. That was not an option. I remember standing on the step of that church, and I said, because they had been telling me what God was like. And and this is what happened. This was the real point of decision for me. My go. I don't know you this way. They're talking about a God I just don't know. If you're like that, I'll figure it out later. But right now, I'm going with the God I've always known. I have no church to go to. I have no friends. All I have is the God I've always known. Let's go. Now, those were my honors, so I'll never forget that. But it was rooted in what I believed about God. I did not believe. I hadn't gone to seminary or any of that stuff at that point. So I only knew what people were telling me. But if God was everything that I believed and thought God was, it was inconsistent with what they were saying. I'm not going to live my life with a God that's inconsistent with what I believe. That's why it's important, hugely important, to figure out what you believe about God, because that defines your next step. That defines your faith.
Yeah.
And there's a lot ahead, but if you got to spend an extra 10 minutes there, spend it. I'm just kidding, because sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But what you believe about God may defy your sociology. It may defy everything. But that's where it is. That's it.
Yeah. And interestingly, it doesn't matter when we're doing a practical prayer, it doesn't matter what our understanding of God is. When we do the prayer, we can do exactly the same prayer and engage in exactly the same prayer process. Even if it's that God who previously thought that I was unworthy. Well, I am worthy, so I'm going to open myself up to a deeper, bigger awareness of the truth of God and my relationship to God, and then use that understanding to do the rest of the practical prayer. I'll make it a little bit into the techniques of practical prayer. I mentioned affirmations, and at the heart of practical prayer is an affirmation. It's a positive I am statement. or claim of whatever good it is that we're looking for. I am prosperous. I am healthy. I am comfortable. I am flexible. I move easily. I have lots of friends. I have a wonderful, committed, loving relationship. Those are the claims that we get to make. And a lot of people are familiar with that because that's what the self-help movement is about. It's about going through the process of and claiming something new. What makes it into a prayer is that we lead into that with our biggest awareness of the creative process that created everything. So pin that thought. That's actually, the affirmation is the third step in a practical prayer. And we'll do 5 for this. I can do 7, and as Robert mentioned, we can do 11 or 19, but we don't need to. The first thing we need to do, as you're saying, Carol, is get an awareness of what we think that divine creative power that creates everything is. And if you call it God or Spirit or Bahalua, it doesn't matter. Whatever that idea of the Creator is, you bring that to mind. And the part that I like is that regardless of what your spiritual tradition is, or if you've got no spiritual tradition and you're an atheist and you believe in evolution, it's the same story. Because the evolutionary story started with the Big Bang 14.2 billion years ago, that there was this dense singularity that exploded. And it then started to recombine and reform and reshape, and it turned into all of the substance and energy that exists anywhere in the universe. And it's continued to interact with itself and to unfold and to evolve. And then one of the things that evolved is Earth and life on Earth and us and internet and all the rest of it. So that's one way of describing where everything came from. It's all just a coincidence, and it all came from that Big Bang. If you were living 6,000 years ago and you had an understanding of that process, and you had to share it with people so somebody could write it down and tell it in a story that was in language that people could understand, it would probably sound something like, in the beginning there was darkness and void and God. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then it goes through the other things that were created subsequently and all of the begatting that happened after that, as everything that we know came into existence. It's the same story. A quantum physicist living in biblical times would tell the story in the language of the times, and it would come out sounding exactly the same. And all of the traditions and all of the practices are telling the same story. And it doesn't matter which story you favor, which one you're clinging. You can insist that yours is the right one and disregard all the rest of them. That's fine. That one creative power, that one divine source that has created everything, and this is the part that gets back to oneness. Because that infinite creative power, the one that, and I like to call it God. I had an allergy to the word God for the longest time because I came up in a traditional religion, and I got away from the judgmental God and this guy pointing down and saying, you don't deserve it. So I was thinking about the Creator, the creative power, divine source, one. And now I can shorthand it, because instead of having a very long sentence, I can just say God. It's the same story for me. So we take our God view and understand that that one source that has created everything has created me. It has to have. It's not possible that God has 2 different sets of creation, just like there's not 2 sets of natural laws. There's only one. So if God created everything and I'm here, then God must have created me, which means that I am just as much God as everything else is. There's no second-rate material. God doesn't have a B list. It's all God created. So that means that same creative power is accessible to me to create this next experience of my life. And with that awareness, that puts us in a completely different mindset and spiritual awareness as we go into our affirmation. Because now it's not me sitting here with no money or no date for Saturday night or worry about a diagnosis, hoping that something good is going to happen. Now it's God and me claiming this newness that I'm looking for. And I can't do it, but boy, God knows how to do this. So I can just bring in the big guy, and together we will make this claim and activate that same creative law that's been created since the Big Bang, or the let there be light or whatever your creation story is, and let that go to work creating the next experience that we have. So that's the process. That's the first 3 steps in a practical prayer. And when we end the practical prayer, we go into gratitude, because there is a goodness that's unfolding. We're claiming something new. The creative power is creating that. There's nothing to do but be thankful for that. Go into gratitude for the good. Go into gratitude for the awareness of the process, the ability to be in partnership with the infinite. It doesn't matter the specifics of what we're in gratitude for. We need the step is to fill ourselves with gratitude. And then the last step in a practical prayer is to let it go, to release it. This is not about willpower and holding something in mind and focusing and making it happen. This is about partnering with an infinite creative power, setting the wheels in motion and getting out of the way. Yeah, we love using gardening and farming metaphors. You want tomatoes, you plant tomato seeds. You want cucumbers, you plant cucumber seeds. Nobody plants weeds, they come up anyway, but that's because those are left over from the old days. So those are the false beliefs. And once you've planted your tomato seeds, you water the garden, you make sure that it's tended, and you stay out of the way. You do not, under any circumstances, go and dig up the seeds and see if you can help them along in germinating. Because that doesn't work. We need to let it go and let the process work. And then at some point we have a harvest. That's the process in a practical prayer. It is a very simple technique to learn. There's a lot of nuance in using it to change our belief system, especially, and thank you for the demonstration that you've done with me over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. When we start with a different tradition, there's a lot of unwinding that we get to do in order to just let that simple awareness of oneness come along. In New Thought, we say there's one power, love, intelligence, or force that creates everything, including each of us, and we're each using that same power, love, intelligence, or force to create our lives according to our beliefs. Mm-hmm. That's the whole dogma. That's the whole creed. That's all of it. There's a lot of nuance to it.
Yes.
There's a lot of detail and nuance to that. But at its core, that's what it is. And practical prayer is about using that belief to create a new experience. Mm-hmm. And it works. It works. One of my favorite things to do is to share prayer work stories. I did a prayer, this is what happened. And it's fun. It's just plain fun as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I used to use the word, and I still do, the word work. I think it is some work, and I think that is a really good word to think about if you are desiring change, because you're up against, as you said, you used the word nuances, which is absolutely true. You're up against a lot of nuances that you're even unaware of. And often I hear you talk about the step 1 with such fluidity and such ease, and this is it. And I'm thinking, there are some people can't get off that one. Like we can't do that. So we're right back at the word go, but it takes work, and if you desire to know something different, yeah. So we talked about that, but I want to skip down to just little places where there's I feel a big difference in gratitude. The idea in traditional church belief about prayer is that you're grateful to God, just generally, I'm just grateful to God. Then you begin to thank God or be grateful for the answer. You're looking for something to be grateful to God for, the answer to this prayer, or I'm thankful for the food, and great. But here's where the rubber hit the road for me. Met the road, whatever that cliche is. In one of the first classes that I took with you, and you were talking about gratitude, and you said, I'm grateful to know all this. And I can't tell you how it blew my mind to just hear those words. I am grateful to know all of this. Regardless of whether anything is changing, whether I actually believe it or not, I'm grateful to know. I'm grateful that I have this information that I can go figure a little bit more out. I am so grateful to know that there is an option. I'm grateful to know that there's something that worked for that spirit worked in such a way that you have this belief. I'm really grateful to know that. I may not understand it right now, but I'm grateful to know it because it gives me my next step. Or I like Florence Scovel Shinn, my next divine right step. Yeah, I'm grateful to know all of this. So my problem becomes secondary in a way, because knowing all of this and being able to uh, give energy and life to all this that I know, I begin to believe it. My issue is resolved and taken care of simply because of how I'm allowing all of this to work. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
trying to disconnect from that thing that you want that's causing you worry, frustration, maybe, maybe not, to what is absolutely the most important, major, paramount thing is that God, I'm grateful to know how God works. I'm grateful to know that it doesn't matter if I'm a jerk. You know, I'm really happy to know that, that even if I'm a jerk, I still have hope. Prayer works because prayer, the mechanics, the science of how it works doesn't depend on whether I'm a jerk or not. And so when you talk about nuances, I spend time in the nuances, in the stuff that can get in the way, and that's where the work comes in. But it's a good work because what you dig up, it's fun and it's beautiful.
Yep. And I've come to agree with you on work. We did the gardening metaphors, and this summer I've actually been gardening, and you get the idea. I'm going to grow tomatoes, and the first thing you do is you get out the wheelbarrow and the shovel, and there's a lot of loading in of the fertilizer and topsoil, and then you got to go dig, and you got to go spread, and you got to go weed, and there's work. There's work involved. It's not
Yeah.
about saying let there be tomatoes.
Right, right.
And there's a part that we get to do, and so yeah, the being willing to do the work is important. And let's actually let's turn this into a live fire drill. I'm going to invite Dr. Robert to come back in. And the fun thing about a practical prayer is the first thing we do with a prayer is we come up with a purpose for the prayer. Because at the end, it's going to generate a result. So we really want to know what the result we want to have is going to be. So we're going to do a generic prayer for everybody who is listening or watching now. And so let's have a discussion. Robert, what should we do the prayer for these fine people?
Oh, that's a great. I wasn't planning for that question.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you some of the ideas that I had because that will give you something to push against.
There we go. I was gonna lay it all on Carol and let us tell her what to pray for.
One of them, or you can tell me what to pray for. One of them is to pray that each one knows even more deeply how loved they are. There's the possibility to pray for a divine insight, and furthermore for that to be something uplifting and happy, rather than, as Carol just pointed out, the divine insight can be, oh, what a jerk I've been. And it's a very effective prayer, but it's not really one that I would want to push off on all of these all the folks who are listening. So how about a prayer for the awareness that we are loved by those around us, by the infinite, by God, whatever we call God, and that each one is getting a divine and uplifting insight.
Absolutely.
You want to do that one? You want me to do that one? You want to share that one?
I'm going to make a suggestion that we let you start first, and we'll do two independent prayers. And what I'm thinking is Bill is going to give us maybe a little bit more of the textbook version, It might be a little easier for people to identify the steps. And then I'm going to go give I'm going to give what I like to call my evangelical holy roller version. Some people say they appreciate the warning and a seatbelt. How about Dr. Bill? If you'll get us started, and then I'll follow in on your heels.
I will do that. How many syllables does it take to say consciousness?
There's only one.
There's only one. So let's turn our awareness to that one divine power and presence, that one love, that one intelligence, that one power that is sharing itself as and through and in all of its creation. Everything is that one taking its own form. And it doesn't matter where we think the one came from. It could be the Big Bang. It could be darkness and void and God. It could be in the beginning was the Word, or whatever the source is. In the beginning there was just that one. Nature, spirit, God, love, the Creator. That one divine power and presence that is sharing itself as all of its creation, that is evolving and unfolding and revealing itself as everything, as everyone, everywhere. I know that that one is right here and now, as each one within the sound of my voice. We are that divine presence taking particular form. And so the claim that I put upon that infinite creative power is to know that each one is loved, each one is blessed, and each one is even more deeply aware of how they're loved and how they're blessed. The evidence shows up in the world around each one to remind us that we are blessed, that we are loved by the individuals who surround us, by the infinite creative power that abides within, that creates everything. And I further claim that each one is even now in the process of receiving an uplifting insight, a new awareness of good and joy and possibility unfolding. There's nothing that stands in the way of this. This creative power has been created since the beginning of time, responding to conscious intention like this. So the invitation now, the intention being set, is for this goodness to unfold. And that infinite creative power that has been saying yes since the beginning of time, that has been saying yes since the infinite said, let there be light, is saying yes to this goodness now. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good. I'm grateful for the stories we get to tell. I'm grateful for the awareness of the process. And I gratefully release this word into that creative law and let it be so. And so it is.
And so it is. So from this energetic vibration of oneness, I invite you to join me. Join in a recognition of this one. The one power, the one presence, the one infinite intelligence that moves and breathes and has its being as all of life. That one source, the one supply, the wellspring of everything and no thing. Call it God or Buddha or Brahma or Yahweh, Vishnu, Kuan Yin, source energy. Call it Gaia. No matter the name, no matter the icon, no matter the vision, we recognize, we come together in this moment and recognize the oneness as my life, as your life, as all life. This one self-existent cause that is forever taking on form and abandoning that form in order to take on new form. And what I know is I know this oneness reveals itself as my life perfectly. Whole, complete, nothing missing, nothing absent. And I know that if this is true for me, and I say it is, I believe it is true for my life, then it must be true for all of life. Everyone that hears these words now or at another time, everyone across the planet, those I don't agree with, those I don't understand, those I wish were not in power, and those I wish were. The oneness revealing itself perfectly as all of life. Every human being across this planet and beyond, every creepy crawly creature or furry creature, winged creature, scaly creature, all of life. Part of this one vibration of love, for love is the basis of it all. all of life vibrating at various levels, various tunes, various cadences of love. See, what I know is I know we are born from love. We are created from love. We are creating love. We are bringing love onto this planet. And so I invite each one here to be in that place right now, that deep sense of knowing it is all love. You are loved and you are loving. It has been said that we are transceivers of this divine vibration. We are transmitting love and receiving love and transmitting love, a never-ending cycle of loving even more deeply, more expansively, of taking this love and shining it into all of the world. Not just those places I like, not just those places that are kind of groovy to me or that I agree with, but shining the love, the light of the divine into every experience, into every conversation, into every interaction, every connection, every event. That is our work. That is our truth. That is what we are here on this planet to do. To be the divine inspiration, to be the inspiration of the divine, to bring the divine into human form, to bring the divine into this human realm and be the light, be the inspiration, be love, be all, be one. Be the one. In this moment, in every conversation, every interaction, I claim for each one that hears these words a deep sense of assurance that everything's happening exactly as it must, that the right conditions, the right people, the right opportunities, the right conversations, heck, even getting all the right green lights, it's all happening, it's all coming into our lives right now as we believe it to be so. And so I stand in that belief, the belief that everything is working out, the belief that I have within me the knowledge, the wisdom, the passion, everything necessary to complete this earthly mission, to complete the mission of my soul's purpose. Believe that and stand in the truth. I am filled with that sense of gratitude. Not any sense of gratitude that something else is going to make this happen, but the sense of gratitude that this is already happening. It's already done. A deep, deep gratitude that the divine is already manifest as my life, as your life. And that everything necessary for the fulfillment of this vision, this mission, this sacred prayer is coming into form. In fact, is already in form. It is coming into my awareness. We release this word, this prayer into that creative universal law that must return this word fulfilled, that cannot return this word void, that is already acting upon this word, already lining up the conditions, the people, the resources, the everything. And I stand in a great, great sense of, yes, it is done. Done in the mind of the one. And I am open to the revelation in the mind of the human. Life is good. And I affirm this truth by simply releasing, allowing, and letting it be. And so it is.
So it is. Let's close with another song.
Absolutely. I want to share this one with you folks. This is Harold Payne, and I'm going to set this up for just a minute here. Along the journey of New Thought came together a group of great luminaries, and they created themselves around the title of the Association for Global New Thought. As Dr. Bill said at the top of our program, there's always a new thought in there somewhere. And the Association for Global New Thought has done great work over the last 30, 40, 50 years now, maybe. And one of those things is they contracted with a great songwriter, a guy named Harold Payne, to write an anthem as part of their programming known as the Season for Nonviolence. And what I've learned about Harold Payne is he is a great collaborator. He is a great visionary, and he rarely does anything alone. And so he reached out to another fabulous New Thought artist, Faith Rivera, and together they came up with this song, What You're Gonna See. This is called Stand Together by Harold Payne and Faith Rivera. Enjoy.
Something great is happening. Love has taken hold. I won't let go of us now.
Something here is calling us forward, upward motion. It drops in one ocean. Hold on.
Will you rise up with me today? Lift up your voice and boldly say, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Live the dream of your highest calling. Be the hope of a new day dawning. We're the ones who can make a difference. Let's stand together. Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's a moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now.
Every day's a chance you can do something amazing to feel your passion blazing and shine.
Take with every vision, dance in new directions, explode to new heights in your mind.
I will rise up with you today.
Lift up my voice.
Lift up my voice and boldly say, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Live the dream of your highest calling. Be the hope of a new day dawning. We're the ones who can make a difference. Let's stand together. Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's a moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now. Yeah. One dream, one voice, one heart, one word, one dream, one voice, one heart, one word, stand together. One dream, one voice, one heart, one word, stand together. Live the dream of your highest calling. Be the hope of a new day dawning. We're the ones who can make the difference. Let's stand together. Yeah, yeah. Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's the moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now. Stand together.
Live the dream.
New day dawning.
Be the hope.
Share your gifts.
Stand together now.
Share your gifts with the world that's waiting for a change that we're all creating. It's the moment for our greatness. Let's stand together now. Stand together.
Live the dream. Be the hope.
Kind of says it all, huh, Dr. Bill? Let's stand together now.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Carol, for joining us today. Thank you, everybody who is watching this, and especially thanks to Interfaith Awareness Week for inviting us to participate. If you want to get a hold of us further, antn.org or newthought.org is how you find the affiliated New Thought Network, info about us, or ntmedia.org, which is where you get a hold of New Thought Media. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We'll have all of these information with live links in the description of today's program. You can find more about New Thought in a wealth of areas, including myself, Dr. Bill, and all the organizations we serve. Again, folks, thank you so much for being with us today, investing your time in this program. We trust you learn, will grow, and expand your consciousness through this entire Interfaith Week. Until next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings.